Welcome to another video, a little bit different from my normal videos. As you see, I'm not out and about, I'm in the house, and the reason for that is a couple of people asked me to do a what's in your bag video. They left comments below a couple of my other films, so I thought I'd show you what's in my bag and what I use when I'm out and about in the mountains and the hills. First thing I should say is the stuff I use for recording these videos. So I'm talking to you on a GoPro session. That's one of those little kind of black cubes. And then to record sound, I have an H1 zoom and a microphone. And it works quite well. So that's kind of, I can't show you the GoPro because obviously I'm filming with it. The other thing I would say is this bag is packed for winter. So it's my winter bag. And everything that's in it would be the sort of stuff I would use when I went to Clynbochluid, for example. So obviously have a different bag in the summer, but I'll go through this one now. First thing I would say, the most important thing from my perspective, is a pair of decent boots. So particularly with ankle protection, the number of times kind of the boots with a high ankle protection save you from twisting your ankle. So if you're going to spend money and this is the first time you're heading out into the hills, spend as much as you can afford on a good pair of boots, waterproof and comfortable, and match it with a good pair of socks. So preferably wool, and the reason being good boots and good socks prevent blisters. Blisters are normally formed by ill-fitting boots or socks rubbing. So if you get good boots and good socks, you're off to a good start. And then just kind of continue the footwear, a set of gaiters, and that's obviously the bag I keep all that stuff in. So the gaiters are important, particularly in wet or boggy weather. So get to the bag itself. I would normally have on the outside my tripod, a Manfrotto, which I've done a review of, so check out the review, I'll put a link in. And then I used to be a bit skeptical about these walking poles, but as I've got older and my knees have got older, I really rely on walking poles, particularly coming downhill. Helps you spread some of the load and gives you, particularly in snowy or icy conditions, helps you have 4 points of contact with the ground. So that would normally be on the outside. What I can't show you at the moment properly is what I would have in the pack itself, but just by way of example, always some sort of liquid in the winter, cup of tea or soup would have been in that, and obviously food. I've not got it packed for a day out, but I'd normally have drinks in one side, food in the other, and enough to last you, at least a day and keep you happy. And then just a few words about the bag itself. This is a Carrymore. It's 65 litres, which sounds a lot, but hopefully you'll see what I use it for. Isn't really all that much. If you're buying a backpack, I always suggest, my advice would always be, check the waistband first and foremost, because all of the weight should be caught around your hips. You should carry the weight around your hips, not on your shoulders. So if you're out and about with a backpack on and at the end of the day your shoulders are aching, it's not set up properly. All of the weight should be on that. So make sure you get a nice big thick waistband just to wrap around your middle and keep you comfortable. And then the other thing about this bag, it is showerproof, but in the bottom here is a rain cover which is attached. It comes out of a little pouch there, and it covers over. I've taken a photograph to show you what that looks like, because I don't want to get it out now because it's a bit of a mess. You can buy separate rain covers, but if you're anything like me, that'll end up kind of blowing away, or you lose it somewhere. So I like the fact that that's detachable and it doesn't weigh anything. So we'll get into the bag itself. I have my kind of bottom section here, which contains my proper waterproof coat, and I emphasize proper. It's Gore-Tex and breathable. Really important to have an outer layer that protects you from the worst of the elements. And then the other stuff I have in the bottom here is kind of my emergency kit. Although that's just a plastic bag, but can come in very handy should you need something. I then have a couple of survival bag, a survival bag and a survival blanket. Survival bag It's essentially just a big plastic bag. It's a bit thicker than the kind of a bin bag that you'd use. But the idea is if you're stuck somewhere, you can climb inside it, wrap it over your head, fully dressed with your boots and everything on, over the top. Keeps the rain and the wind out and keeps the heat in. And it's orange, obviously, so people can see you if you're stuck. The reason I have a second one, a survival blanket, is that's just big enough for 2 people. So it's not a bag, it's just a big blanket, but just big enough for 2. Sounds romantic. And then a small first aid kit. Realistically, that is about looking after cuts and abrasions, those type of things. It's not going to save you if you break your leg, but then other than carrying a stretcher, I don't know what you do, but there's enough in there to look after minor injuries, and also kind of some blister packs and stuff like that. A little bit of extra insulation. I've got a couple of these space blankets, just in case. And then the last bit of emergency kit is a sharp knife, and you can imagine what that's for. So that's the bottom. Nice thing about this bag is that unzips, so you can unzip and make the compartment bigger. We then go to the top of the bag, and I have in here, well, usually, again, it's not packed for me going out. Sorry, it's a bit tangled up. Just unthread that. But this is a map carrier. So it's a waterproof map carrier and compass and pencils in the back. So if you don't know how to use a map and a compass, you shouldn't really be out in the hills because it could save your life. There's lots and lots of kind of resources on the internet to teach you how to use a map, take a bearing. Please use it if you're going out in the hills. Please, please, please have a map and a compass. You can't rely on Google Maps. A spare compass, just in case. And that's it for the top. I sometimes will put food in the top because I can unzip it over the top of my head, so it prevents me from taking my my pack off. And then we'll get to the insides. Just open this. It's like delving into Mary Poppins' bag. There's another pocket here. So I'll just open this pocket and show you what I have. 2 head torches, primarily for lighting my way if it's dark, either first thing in the morning or at night, but also for doing a bit of light painting. But I've got 2 in case one breaks or the batteries run out. I've got a spare. Check the batteries frequently. Spare pair of laces. There's nothing worse than breaking a lace on your boot when you're kind of 6 miles from the car or wherever. So spare pair of laces. And although these say hand warmer on the pack, they're those things that you open when you take them out. There's a chemical reaction, they warm up. I don't use them as hand warmers, I use them as camera warmers. So if I get somewhere where I'm in a blizzard or something like that, it just helps keep my camera functioning a little bit. Or you could use them as hand warmers if you so need. Then get into the bag itself. So I said I'd talk about the gear. This is where I keep all my camera gear. So you can buy specialist camera bags that are also hiking bags. Well, I've bought a hiking bag and bought one of these, and it does the same job. This is cushioned and waterproof, so it keeps the rain off. And in here I have my camera body, my 17-40 lens. I would normally have my 70-200 lens, but Martin, my brother, has borrowed it and he didn't bring it back when he said. But I also have my filters, spare batteries, spare memory cards, cleaning cloth, those type of things. And that would be what I would take if I'm going on a landscape shot. If I was going on a macro shooting insects or butterflies or flowers, I'd have a different setup, and maybe I'll share that setup. I actually take a lot more equipment with me if I'm doing a macro shot, but for a landscape shot, I keep it simple. Then in the rest of my bag, little piece of magic. When you're out in the hills, you're probably familiar with the layering system, so wear lots of layers rather than kind of one big heavy coat. So I would typically have kind of a base layer, something like this, and then if it's just raining, waterproof over the top. But if it goes a bit chilly, or if I stop somewhere to kind of have lunch or I'm taking photos, this is fantastic. It goes into that sack, but it's a hooded fibre jacket. It's relatively cheap. It fluffs up a bit, so you shake it up and it fills up with air. And it's another warm layer. It actually is really, really warm. But I'd recommend getting some of that. It weighs next to nothing. This shows, if I can find my way, everything is packed in dry bags. So dry bags are brilliant for a couple of reasons. It means you can put stuff in almost like a modular system, so keep stuff separate. Obviously, although the backpack is weatherproof and I've got the waterproof cover, in case of emergency or kind of something happening, another layer to keep my stuff dry. But also, two other advantages. You squeeze the air out of these and it packs down really tightly. But also, if stuff gets wet, you can put it back in the dry bag and then it stops your wet stuff getting into contact with other stuff, like your camera, for example. So, you know, if everything in here was wet, I'm wearing it, gets wet, don't want to put it back in and get my camera damp. You can put it in there and keep stuff dry. So, just go through what's in here. This is my kind of almost winter pack. So, pair of mittens. I know they sound like something you'd have when you're in primary school, but actually I prefer mittens to finger gloves for two reasons. One, I think if your hands get cold and you've got your hands in mittens, they warm up more quickly because your fingers are together. But also if you're working with your camera and you've got gloves on, it can be a bit tricky. But mittens, you can kind of whip them off, fix your camera, and then stick them back on. So pair of mittens. They're not waterproof. They're just for warmth. This is you've probably seen me in some of my other videos wearing a woolly lila hammer hat. It's not waterproof, so if it gets too wet, you don't really want a soaking wet woolen hat on. This is it's Valentine's Day tomorrow. How anyone could resist me when I've got this on? It's a warm, but it's also a waterproof, completely waterproof hat in case the weather's bad. I have a buff, which I guess many of you are familiar with. It's just like a tube of material which goes over your head, around your neck, keep your neck warm, stop the wind getting in. And then probably a little bit over the top, another two pair of gloves, a pair of inner gloves, which are kind of light cotton type gloves, and I can wear them inside my my mittens if it's really cold, or then if it's wet, I have a pair of sealskin gloves. Don't know if you're familiar with sealskin, but they're 100% waterproof, but a bit cumbersome for playing with your camera. But I only really wear those if it's really, really heavy rain. But they do keep your hands 100% dry. Then we have another dry bag, and in this is my kind of emergency extra warmth kind of layering system. So first, an extra pair of socks. It's really nice if you've been out for a long walk and your feet are hot and sweaty or a bit damp. It's lovely to put on a pair of clean, dry socks. And then two spare base layers. So kind of a t-shirt type in this kind of lurid colour. And this is the type of material that kind of wicks sweat away from your body. And then a long sleeve version. But they're the sort of things that kind of you buy from runners' shops. You can buy specialist ones, but I think that one cost me £1 and that one cost me £2. But they're the right type of material. And then the final thing in my bag, I think the final thing in my bag is kind of waterproofs. So dig down in here. Oh, actually, there's an extra fleece just in case. And then my waterproofs. So if it wasn't raining when I set out, my waterproof coat would probably be in here. But then my waterproof trousers, which again are Gore-Tex, keep you nice and dry. It's interesting, in the winter, some people wear long johns under their trousers. Problem with long johns under your trousers, if you get too hot, you've got to take your shoes and your trousers off to take the long johns off. Whereas what you often find is you start off a little bit cold, but then when you get up a bit of momentum, you get warm. So I would start off with my waterproofs on, which provide a bit of warmth. And then when I get warm, these will come off over your boots, so you don't have to take anything off. Just it's a personal preference, but I find it easy. So that's the contents of my bag. It's fairly simple, fairly straightforward. Just one thing on the outside is a whistle. So rather than shouting for help if need be, I can whistle and draw attention. But that's the bag. It's not perfect. I'm not suggesting it's perfect. It's what suits me. It's the sort of stuff I would take in the winter. I'd like to get the weight down a little bit because it can feel a bit, when you first put it on, it does feel like you're carrying a kind of small, medium-sized child. But I'd rather take the stuff with me than be somewhere and then regret it. So we'd love to hear what you carry in your bag. Be interesting if you've got any comments or any questions. Kind of leave them below. But hopefully that gives you an idea of what's on my back when I'm heading up into the hills to take some photographs.